Chris Hughes. I am a circuit judge for the 37th Judicial Circuit encompassing Lee County. I have lived in Auburn for the better part of my life.
My name is Mary Wynn Kling.
My name is Sheila Ekman. I'm semi-retired. My only occupation as president is county commissioner, and I've lived in Auburn for almost 40 years.
Rajan Hudson.
Jonathan Fisk.
My name is Linda Tremaine. I grew up in Auburn. I've been here since 4th grade. Went to elementary school, middle school, high school at Auburn, and then Auburn University. I am a retired educator with Auburn City Schools. I was principal at Wrights Mill Road until 3 years ago when I retired. Then upon retirement, I ran for and was elected for Ward 5 City Council.
I think Auburn has traditionally differed as a little more liberal than others and more diverse as well, and you certainly contribute that to the university setting.
I think that Auburn is politically fairly diverse. I think that because of the campus we skew a little more liberal than much of the rest of this area of Alabama, but it's still fairly conservative.
It's very conservative. It's very singular, I think, not really open a lot to new ideas sometimes. I do think we differ from a lot of towns in Alabama that we are progressive in some ways.
Probably more of a two-party town than other places in the state of Alabama. There's probably more people who vote Democratic than typically across the state of Alabama.
Auburn, being a small college town, unlike other southern towns, probably has more of influence from the faculty, which historically most people attribute as college faculty being more sympathetic to left-leaning politics. There's a kind of this sense of security in Auburn that we have this diversity, and even though most of the town probably still historically and still today, I'm guessing, favors conservative politics, people feel that they can are freer to express different political ideologies out in the open, so they don't have to hide being a liberal as much as they would in other parts of the state.
What is it like to have more liberal beliefs in the South?
It can be challenging. I actually grew up in a staunchly Republican family. My very first job was working for the Republican National Committee. Jeff Sessions is a dear friend of my parents. In fact, my dad was even offered a job with the Trump administration. It can sometimes lead to challenging discussions, especially at family holidays. And it can be difficult to feel sometimes as though your beliefs are so different from that of many of your friends and neighbors.
Auburn is more of a progressive city, and I think that it being a college town, the values are shaped more so by the youth and the current generation that's staying here.
Cultural and educational level is out of proportion to its population because of the university. I think that as the town grows, that diminishes. When I was young, it was probably more true because virtually everybody in town was employed by the university. Now you have a lot of retirees, you have a lot of people who have moved from other places to come work at the various industries, so I think it's less of a pure university town.
I believe that we are unique. We are in a bubble. The university offers us so much for us. I said growing up here, I was in a little slow, quiet southern town until football Saturdays, and then all of a sudden we're one of the largest cities in the state.
So as Auburn's growing, the diversity isn't necessarily growing as proportionally as Auburn's overall population. We're seeing a lot of upper class, middle class movement into Auburn, but not linked to the university. So we are beginning to see a more traditional Alabama conservative mindset in Auburn as we see the population grow, but not linked to the university. I think a determining factor that you can look at to show that Auburn is truly solidifying itself as more of a conservative town in the model of other more predominantly white rural, not rural, but suburban communities of Alabama is you look at the recent House district election. You didn't have a single Democrat running for that seat in what was an open election, and open elections tend to be quite competitive, and no one was willing to run, essentially demonstrating that the Democrat Party has ceded Auburn to the Republican side.
We like to think we're progressive. But I think it's interesting, it was interesting to me when I was on city council and since then, a lot of the leadership of the city council, and I think it's probably true of the county commission too, when they travel to the beach or they go to football games. So they don't necessarily see a lot of other towns and how they operate. I was lucky in one way that I had a job for about 10 years where I flew into different towns and had to go out and conduct interviews there. And you begin to see the differences in towns in that way. And so I think in some ways we could use a little broader perspective.
We really are. If you look past the university, we're a small town. Now, we're still, our population's about 62,000, I believe now. So we're not, definitely can't say we're a small town anymore. But we're certainly not a huge city like Birmingham. And I go there quite often because I have family there. And I think we're very lucky that we're not. We have the amenities that large towns have. We lack in things such as shopping options here, but the Chamber of Commerce and the City of Auburn, they're always looking for ways to give more options to people so that everybody has what we need right here in our little city. But if not, we're lucky that we are close to Montgomery and Birmingham and Atlanta. If anybody misses some of the larger amenities that those big cities have.
In a town growing like Auburn with around 60,000 people and a faculty large but still probably less than 1,500, I'm not sure how large that political influence is throughout the entire community.
A lot of struggles and issues that other cities have faced in Alabama, Auburn hasn't. For example, the recession, a lot of cities were hit pretty bad by the recession, but Auburn kind of came out pretty clean and it was basically unscathed. So it's a well-ran city, and I can see how it is, especially with college football and just their large emphasis on sports and just making it an attractive place. And plus they have a good education system here too.
Well, Auburn is unique, and of course because having a large university in the town, I believe that we're definitely different from other towns in Alabama. We are unique in that we've got a diversity of people here because of the university and then because of the industrial parks we have with businesses in Auburn.
I think that the landscape of Auburn University, I would view as more a liberal stance, just based on the students and the point of views and the ideas and opinions I had noticed across students here. And the city of Auburn has a more traditional point of view and just old-time values, just how they want the city represented, just how they want this family-friendly area. Those are the two main things I noticed about City of Auburn versus Auburn University.
The Alabama Together Facebook group actually started as a Pantsuit Nation group for Auburn. My friend Teresa Hoke and I started it just before Election Day when we had hopes that things were going to turn out very differently. And it was started really as a place to talk to our friends and know that we could talk about liberal views and not have somebody call us special snowflakes or crybabies. And the Pantsuit Nation national organizations asked us, all small groups, to stop using that name. So we came together and we voted on Alabama Together. It is a very diverse group of anyone who wants political change, not only in Alabama as a whole, but even here specifically in Auburn. We have different groups that focus within Alabama Together that focus on different needs. Healthcare is one of the groups that I've gotten to help with a little bit. Education reform, all kinds of different action items that we're interested in changing the political landscape here in Auburn. So our most recent was a town hall with Mike Rogers, except that Mike Rogers didn't show up. We also meet monthly to discuss ways forward and ways to make positive change in the community.
Certainly there's a discrepancy in what the faculty staff of the university believe versus what the adult average population of Auburn believes. But if you look at the student population is largely in-state, more upper class, middle class, coming from families that can afford college, and they share a lot of the conservative values that most of their parents would share. So in terms of student body in the town of Auburn, I think there's a lot of similarity there. But if you were to do a study comparing political beliefs of the university faculty versus the town of Auburn non-faculty, you would certainly see a discrepancy there. But that's a historic discrepancy as well. Universities have largely been known since the 1960s or so to have a more liberal bias, not necessarily to favor Democrats, but to be favorable more to an open-minded alternative perspective adoption.
Disagree that politically Auburn is really any different than any other mid-sized town in Alabama or in the Southeast. I mean, sure, there's the political influence of the university, but I feel like that's fairly minimal as far as the overall voting population of Auburn. But I do feel like because of the diversity that the university brings to the community, then there is a sense that people who have different political ideologies, let's say, this is a fairly conservative area, conservative state, people who tend to sympathize or favor more politically in the left, I feel may feel safer expressing their views in Auburn than they would in other parts of the state.
It is definitely a bubble. It's very much a bubble, and you just don't realize that again until you get out and go to other areas, not another university town. University towns are kind of unique in themselves, I think. I think it's very much a bubble, and I see that a lot when the trip I just came from that I was telling you about, small town of Pennsylvania, outside of Pittsburgh, very much a blue-collar town, totally different politically. And again, I go to a little town up in North Georgia. I have a little cabin up there, and it's part of Appalachia. And my cabin is not in the high rent district. You just go to the grocery store, you go to Walmart, it's a whole different experience than it is here. So I think we definitely live in a bubble. That's a pretty good bubble though. As long as you realize it's a bubble and you realize this isn't what the whole world is like.
It's definitely a unique city. It's got its challenges ahead of us. But if we have people who are interested in where we're going and what type of future we want here, I think the future's bright for Auburn.